have DNA test revealed I have 8 secret siblings. My dad's double life finally exposed. The notification email arrived on a Tuesday morning, innocuous among the usual spam and newsletters. You have new DNA matches, it cheerfully announced. I'd submitted my saliva sample to the genealogy website 6 months earlier, hoping to trace my Eastern European roots for a family tree project. What I discovered instead shattered everything I thought I knew about my father. The first match showed 25% shared DNA. Sister or brother, the algorithm confidently declared. My heart stopped. I was an only child, had been my entire 32 years of life. There had to be a mistake. But as I scrolled down, more matches appeared, another sibling match, then another, and another. By the time I reached the bottom of the list, 8 names stared back at me, all sharing enough DNA to be half siblings. 8 people I'd never heard of, scattered across 3 different states, all connected to me through one common thread: our father. I sat in my kitchen for an hour, staring at the screen, my coffee growing cold. Dad had been gone for 5 years now, taken by a sudden heart attack at 68. He'd been a traveling salesman for agricultural equipment, gone 3 weeks out of every month, crisscrossing the Midwest. Mom always joked that he had a girl in every port, but it was supposed to be a joke. The first person I contacted was Sarah, 35, living in Nebraska. Her profile picture showed a woman with my father's distinctive green eyes and the same stubborn cowlick that had plagued me since childhood. When she answered my message 2 days later, her words hit like a physical blow. I've been wondering when one of Dad's other kids would find me. Sarah's story unraveled slowly over a series of phone calls. Her mother, Linda, had been a receptionist at a farming co op in Omaha. Dad had swept through town monthly for 15 years, staying at the same motel, taking Linda to the same diner. Sarah grew up believing her father was a devoted traveling businessman who couldn't marry her mother because of complicated family obligations back east. He sent money every month, Sarah told me, her voice hollow. Birthday cards, Christmas presents. He came to my high school graduation. I thought I was special, his precious secret daughter. I never imagined there were others. But there were others. So many others. Marcus in Iowa, 31, whose mother Beth had been a parts clerk at a John Deere dealership. Dad visited her every 6 weeks for 12 years, playing the role of the devoted boyfriend who couldn't quite commit due to his complicated situation at home. Jennifer in Missouri, 29, whose mother Carol worked at a grain elevator. Same pattern: regular visits, financial support, elaborate stories about why he couldn't marry her or bring her into his real life. The twins, David and Daniel, 26, in Kansas. Their mother, Susan, had been a secretary at an agricultural loan office. She'd believed she was Dad's great love, the woman he was planning to divorce his wife for when the time was right. Rebecca, 24, in Illinois. Her mother, Patricia, was a bank teller who handled loans for farmers. Dad had promised her they'd run away together once his business obligations were settled. And then there was Michael, the youngest at 22, in Wisconsin. His mother, Karen, had been a waitress at a truck stop restaurant. She died when Michael was 16, never knowing about the rest of us. Each conversation was like watching the same tragic play performed by different actors. Dad had used the same script with every woman: the lonely traveling salesman, devoted to his work, trapped by circumstances, but desperately in love. He'd promised each of them a future together while maintaining his perfect facade at home with Mom. The financial logistics alone were staggering. 8 children, 8 child support payments, 8 sets of Christmas presents and birthday cards, 8 elaborate lies maintained for decades. I started calculating between the monthly support payments, gifts, occasional plane tickets to attend graduations and important events. Dad must have been spending more on his secret families than he was on his official one. Mom was still alive, 73, and living in the same house where I'd grown up. The house where Dad had returned every month, tired from his business trips, where he'd sat at our dinner table and complained about the loneliness of life on the road. I'd pitied him then. All those nights in anonymous motels, all those meals eaten alone. How do you tell your mother that her husband of 45 years wasn't just unfaithful, but had been systematically deceiving 8 other women and fathering children with them? How do you explain that the man she'd mourned for 5 years had been living parallel lives with surgical precision? I drove to Mom's house on a Saturday morning, the DNA results printed and organized in a manila folder that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She was in her garden, tending to the tomatoes Dad had planted in his final spring. I found something, I said, sitting beside her on the porch steps we'd shared countless conversations on throughout my childhood. She listened in silence as I explained the DNA test, the matches, the phone calls with my newfound siblings. Her face remained perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. When I finished, she was quiet for so long I wondered if she'd stopped breathing. I knew, she finally whispered. The words hit me like a slap. You knew? Not everything, not the extent, but I knew he wasn't faithful. She looked out at the garden, her voice distant. A woman knows, honey. The smell of different perfumes on his clothes, the way he'd jump when the phone rang, credit card charges from places he wasn't supposed to be. Why didn't you leave him? She smiled sadly. This was the 1970s, the 1980s. I had a high school education and no job skills. You were young, and I couldn't support us alone. And he was a good father to you, wasn't he? He never missed your school plays or baseball games. He loved you completely. The cruelest revelation wasn't Dad's betrayal. It was realizing that Mom had been a victim too, trapped in a marriage by circumstance and society's expectations, forced to accept a partial husband because she had no alternatives. Over the following months, my newfound siblings and I began connecting with each other. We created a group chat, shared photos from our childhoods, compared stories. The similarities were eerie, eerie. We all had Dad's eyes, his laugh, his terrible sense of direction. Several of us had chosen careers in agriculture or related fields, as if drawn by some genetic pull toward the industry that had provided Dad's cover story. But the differences were striking too. Sarah had become a nurse, pouring her life into caring for others. Marcus was an engineer, building bridges, perhaps trying to connect what his father had kept apart. Jennifer taught elementary school, creating the stable family environment she'd never had. The twins ran a small organic farm together, working side by side in a partnership Dad had never been capable of. Rebecca was studying law, specializing in family court cases. I want to help people who've been lied to, she told us during one of our video calls. I want to make sure kids don't grow up wondering why their father can't be there for Christmas morning. Michael, the youngest, struggled the most. He'd grown up believing his father was a devoted partner to his mother, someone who would have married her if only he'd lived longer. Learning that Dad had been married to someone else the entire time, that his promises to Michael's dying mother had been lies, sent him into a spiral of anger and depression. We all dealt with our grief differently. Some of my siblings wanted nothing to do with Mom, viewing her as the official wife who had somehow stolen their father from them. Others felt sorry for her, recognizing her as another victim of Dad's elaborate deceptions. A few wanted to meet her, to understand the man they'd thought they knew. The hardest part was reconciling the father I'd known with the man who deceived so many people for so long. My dad had been my hero, present, engaged, supportive. He'd taught me to drive, helped with homework, cheered from the sidelines at every game. How could the same man who'd been so devoted to me have abandoned 8 other children, visiting them only when convenient, keeping them secret like shameful mistakes? A year after the DNA results arrived, we held our first family reunion, all 9 of us, plus Mom, who'd insisted on attending despite the awkwardness. We met at a park in Iowa, roughly central to where we all lived. It was surreal, seeing Dad's features reflected in 8 other faces, hearing his laugh echo through 8 other voices. We spent the weekend sharing stories, filling in the gaps of our father's life. Each of us had possessed only fragments of the whole man, like pieces of a complicated puzzle. Together, we could see the complete picture, a man capable of great love and terrible selfishness, someone who'd tried to be everything to everyone and had ultimately been authentic with no one. Mom brought photo albums from my childhood, sharing pictures of the father we'd all thought we knew exclusively. In return, my siblings shared their own photos. Dad at their graduations, Dad teaching them to ride bikes, Dad sleeping in airport chairs between flights to visit them. He'd been present in all our lives, just never completely in any of them. As the sun set on that first reunion, we sat in a circle, 9 children grieving the father we'd lost and the father we'd never really had. We were bound together not just by DNA, but by the shared experience of loving someone who'd been incapable of honest love in return. Sarah, the oldest, spoke for all of us. He wasn't a good husband or a good partner, but he was our father, and in his broken way, he loved us all. Maybe not well, maybe not honestly, but genuinely. It's been 3 years now since that first DNA notification changed everything. We stay in touch, celebrating birthdays and holidays together, creating the extended family Dad never allowed us to have while he was alive. We've established a scholarship fund in his name for children of single mothers, turning his legacy of secrets into something that helps rather than hurts. I still struggle with anger sometimes, mourning the relationships with my siblings that his deception stole from us. We could have grown up knowing each other, supporting each other through life's challenges. Instead, we met as adults, strangers connected by genetics and grief. But I've also learned something profound about forgiveness and the complexity of human nature. Dad wasn't a monster. He was a deeply flawed man who made terrible choices that cascaded through multiple generations. Understanding his failings doesn't excuse them, but it helps me see him as human rather than villain. The DNA test I'd taken hoping to learn about my ancestors ended up teaching me something far more important: that family isn't just about blood or secrets or the lies we tell ourselves. It's about the connections we choose to maintain, the love we decide to share, and the healing we're willing to do together. My 8 siblings and I are proof that even the most destructive secrets can eventually give way to something beautiful if we're brave enough to face the truth and wise enough to forgive the past.